Welcome to the Find Your Voice, Change Your Life podcast with psychologist Dr. Doreen Downing. Listen in as Doreen interviews people who felt they didn't have a voice or who suffered extreme speaking anxiety. You'll hear stories about how they struggled to speak up, what they did to find their authentic voice, and the confidence they now feel to speak up and make an impact. If you want to get started right away to find your voice, download Doreen's free 7-step guide to fearless speaking at doreen7steps.com. And now, here is Doreen.
Hi, welcome to Find Your Voice, Change Your Life. This is a podcast that I host. I'm Dr. Doreen Downing, psychologist. And because I'm a psychologist, that gives me a lot of curiosity about what's behind the success that people get today, because they usually they just don't pop out all successful, making lots of contributions to this world, except for probably just being beautiful little babies. It's a huge contribution already. But so today I get to interview a good friend of mine, Renee Zukin. Hi, Renee.
Hi, Dr. Doreen. It's so good to be here with you.
Wonderful. I'd like to read a bio so that people at least get a frame for what we'll be talking about, or at least the backstory of what we'll be talking about today. Renee Zukin is an author, educator, coach, and mental health advocate doing the inner work to see outer change. She has more than 20 years of experience in education, writing, entrepreneurship, and has studied multiple psychological and healing modalities that have sustained her and helped support her students and clients alike. And Renee is passionate about cultivating a safe space for others to use the written word as a tool for self-transformation and empowerment. And today we get to introduce you to Renee's book, Every Day I'm Brave, Cultivating Resilience to Gain Freedom from Fear. And that will be released on August 8th. By the time you're watching this episode, it will have already been released. There will be a launch party, but we are still celebrating month after month because good information, good healing is always out there, and we always want to have access to it. Thanks, Renee, for making this available to us.
Absolutely. It's an honor and a pleasure. It's been, a labor of love, so to speak, to write the book, to tell my story, and to offer it as a way for other folks to find a way through their fear.
The word you just used really touched me, the offering of it.
Yeah.
To have our lives and then bring it out and have our hands open like this and offering it. Whew. That really touched me.
Oh, thank you for that.
Yeah.
For me, it was one of the things that kept me going through the process is the continual reminder that it's a way for me to show up in service.
Yeah. Well, let's see, before you made a decision to show up in service, you showed up in some kind of family situation. And I always like to, that's one thing that people who listen to the podcast get to hear right away is like, where were you born? What was your family situation? Oftentimes, for those of us who have done deep transformational work like you have, there's been deep pain that we've had to endure or find our way through. So whatever you can say about some snapshots of that early life.
Sure. Well, I think I had a pretty good early life. I was born in Detroit, lived there with my family, long history. And then quite an impactful at the age of 9, we made a move from Detroit, big city metro, to Iowa. My dad had gotten.
I don't know why that made me laugh, but
I mean, it was a bit of a culture shock and definitely a shift, even for me as a kid. But it was one of those things that I think allowed me to have a sense of adventure while also carrying along the grief and loss of, leaving, my friends and family and everybody I knew.
Uh-huh.
And then, pretty standard 80s upbringing. I talk a little bit about some different things throughout my life that kind of brought me to where I am today. But certainly one of the things that has always been present for me is a real visceral sense of fear. There were, even though I was an adventurous, fun-loving kid, there were some things that really caused me a lot of fear. And I didn't really know how to interact with that, of course, as a kid and as a teenager, and into my adulthood.
Do we ever?
No, right.
Do we like here, kid, here's the workbook to learn how to be emotionally resilient and
Right.
to be able to navigate. Before you go too much further, it's just always makes me curious about, well, what was the circumstance of that move to Iowa?
My dad worked for an automotive company in Detroit, and he got a promotion. They were opening up a new plant in Iowa City, and we were like, okay, here's an opportunity. And it was quite an experience. And I've left and come back a couple of times, but I've managed to call Iowa City home for the last 20 years.
Uh-huh. And the birth order, where are you on the
I'm the baby. So I'm the youngest of three. I have two older brothers.
Wow.
Yes.
That in itself says a lot. I've heard a lot of people talk about having older brothers in both the good and positive. But already it seems like what I'm hearing from you, that there's this attitude that you have, that there's both the loss that you experienced as well as an opportunity, that whole idea about that Chinese character that
The
says,
yin yang. Yeah.
yeah, well,
Yeah.
that there's both. In the Chinese character itself has opportunity or danger. I think the two combined
Ah,
make something. It's been a
yes.
while since I thought about that, because through the years of being somebody who loves transformation and inspiration, that stood out to me. So, okay, Iowa girl. All right. And early school, but you said fear, you remember fear being something that was kind of challenging, and then we both laughed that of course there isn't a hand
Right.
for that. But um, are do you feel like you kind of had more of a sensitive in something about being, or how come?
Yeah. I mean, I certainly feel like I was, a sensitive child in the sense of just really, and even still today, I just have a lot of awareness. Like I'm constantly aware of all the input.
Ah,
So that can obviously get overwhelming. But one of the things that I now understand about my childhood that I didn't, I was diagnosed with obsessive compulsive disorder in my 30s.
oh,
Yeah. And what I realized looking back is a lot of the challenges and the fears that I had, even as a child, were from these intrusive thoughts.
ah,
And I didn't know how to name it. And what we see as OCD out in mainstream media is not really what it's, yes, there's liking things organized and neat, and yes, there's hand washing, and different people have different things, but the intrusive thoughts is really the hallmark. And so until that the real sort of inner workings were coming out in ways that other people could then see. I mean, it became very obvious. OCD has this something called latching, and in my 30s, it latched onto food safety. And all of a sudden, I kept getting intrusive thoughts that what I was about to eat wasn't safe.
Oh. This is important. This is very important for me because I do have a situation of a friend who's got a child, and
Mhm.
I'll be able to at least refer to this as a perhaps a condition that has a name.
Yes. Yes.
Wow, because you're right. OCD feels like, oh, you can't go across a crack on a sidewalk or something,
Right. Right.
And
Yeah.
so the intrusive thoughts, have you, in your own explorations of intrusive thoughts and looking back on it as a history of it, are intrusive, or just maybe theoretical, are intrusive thoughts a way to avoid something else?
Not necessarily. You know, I suppose it could, like in parts work, right? That can be, these parts of
Uh-huh.
you that are keeping you safe, kind of
Yes.
thing.
Uh-huh.
But in fact, it really feels the opposite. E-
Hmm.
Even though it can be this sense of safety, there's what I learned in the cognitive behavior therapy work that I did is that these thoughts are just thoughts. It's the brain, doing its thing, and that we don't have to attach to it. It doesn't mean anything about who we are or what we need to do because we've had this thought. And that was something I certainly didn't understand before diagnosis because, unless you're or already doing some sort of mindfulness work or cognitive behavior therapy or, it's just not something people talk about. So for me, those intrusive thoughts were just really scary.
Uh-huh.
And, when I was little, I chalked it up to, oh, I have just a really vivid imagination, which is also true. A lot of creatives, right? That's also true. And there's just a real different element because there's an automatic fear response to the thought. And until this is where the rituals come in, right? Until
Oh, yeah.
put your hand so many times or turn the knob so many times, you can't dampen that very physical, visceral anxiety and panic that comes with the thought.
So are people born with that tendency for the mind to operate that way?
There is a genetic component to it that I've learned a little bit about, but it's certainly, with anything genetic, right? There's an on-off switch. There's ways in which, for a lot of things that, so yes, there is a predisposition. If I look back at, different people in my family lineage or, have heard other people talking who have it and, kind of looking back at their parents, well, this makes sense. And some of it is just habit, right? Practice habits that you learn. Oh, my dad was always really neat and he made sure that we always kept our room clean, right? Again, like that's the sort of outer piece of it. But what happens if, it matters more what the response is to the need and the urge and the thought. So yeah, it's interesting.
So the idea of the urge and the thought, and then the fear that is more the, I better not, I guess, is the idea, or I shouldn't, or uh, especially when you talked about food. But um, before we go a little bit deeper into, well, then how do you manage or navigate, or so for listeners out there today, how do they learn to go within? And that it's an inside job from what I read when I introduced you. Uh,
Mhm.
I have so many questions, but I need to take a quick break and we'll
Yes,
be right back.
great.
If you want to get started right away to find your voice, download Doreen's free 7-step guide to fearless speaking at doreen7steps.com.
Hi, we're back with Renee Zukin, who's talking to us about a condition, and I'm just going to make it nice and easy and call it intrusive thoughts. We don't have to give it a diagnosis, although Renee has just written a book about being brave that's going to be on the bookshelves, and you're going to be able to get it. Renee Zukin, is it called Be Brave? Is that the title?
Every day I'm brave.
Every day I'm brave. Yeah.
Mhm.
I just know brave is the word that just relates to me. So, and it's
Yeah.
so inspiring. So I guess maybe that's a good place to start right now is brave.
Yeah.
If every day you're brave, how did you even know what brave, how did that
Mm.
come to you?
Yeah, it's a great question. So one of the things I introduced the concept, uh, first thing in the book, and for me it was as I was, dealing with a lot of anxiety, and my world was really pretty small. I was too afraid to travel. Food was an issue. I was working, you know, um, raising my kids. Life was very busy, but it was also very small. And my partner at the time was somebody who traveled worldwide for work, and he was always off doing things. And I'd look around and I'd see my friends, go on girls' trips, and they would hop on planes and go do these fun things. And I would constantly be in comparison, looking at other people doing these brave things. And it got to a point where, I kind of got a little upset about it. And I was like, you know what?
Mm.
I'm brave because I got out of bed today.
Oh,
I'm brave because I showed up to work, even though, I'm completely burned out. So this perspective really kind of dawned on me that bravery is this spectrum. And what's brave for one person, is totally different for somebody else. I mean, we all hold fear of some kind. Yeah, so I didn't have to compare myself anymore, right?
oh, I thought about that, looking at somebody traveling. Well, why do they how come you called that brave, but you were just comparing yourself and said, I can't do that. But then one day you went, aha, ooh, this one step is really, really brave. Oh, that feels so empowering to have come to that realization.
Yeah, it really was. It really was. And so it became a mantra for me, really. And it became,
Oh,
the thing that I helped that helped me, take some braver steps into the future and creating a life I really wanted, instead of letting fear call the shots all the time.
uh-huh.
And even that, that self-comparison, what's brave for me, 1 minute is maybe not the next day, and I could try again tomorrow, right? Like,
Yeah.
so it really allowed me to develop a lot of self-compassion.
Uh-huh. I
Uh,
love the idea also that it's every day. It's
yes,
like someday.
right, right. Yeah,
And you
yeah,
also said because I wasn't yesterday doesn't mean I can't be today.
right.
I just that phrase, that mantra feels
Mm.
like it's so rich. Well, the podcast is about finding your voice. So maybe we could shift into, well, how do you think about that idea of having a voice or not having a voice?
Mm. Yeah. For me, having a writing voice, having a speaking voice, getting to be able to do this work, has always been something that I longed to do, and I didn't know if I could, because of all these fears and the way that it was impacting me. I didn't really see a path forward into this kind of leadership, uh, and this kind of work, because I would feel like, well, I don't know. I don't know how to move forward. People are going to know that I'm really just anxious, or I'm a mess, or I'm, how do I show up as a leader when I'm so bogged down by the anxiety, the fear, the self-doubt, the, imposter syndrome. And that took some work. That took some, me really being committed to the process of of deciding really that this message, my voice, what I can offer has meaning, is valuable, and that I am worthy of doing this inner work in order to not just show up in service, but in order to express my full self and to show up authentically.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Because that wasn't easy. I was hiding quite a bit. And as, as I gain mentors and as I put more of my work out in the world and, led some programs and, worked with my students and my clients, like each level, I was able to learn something new and grow it in different ways and then turn that into and around as the offering to somebody else who is also on the path, because we're all on a very similar path here, really trying to get to know who we are and reclaim our voices and speak our truth. It's it's so important to do it, if even just for ourselves and not for anybody else. Like that's enough of a reason to do it.
Oh, I'm so glad you said that. For people who are listening today, it encourages them that they don't have to get out and write a book and be of service to other people. They can just do their own journey, and that's huge and brave. And in your so anyway, that's huge and brave. Another question I have about, and this is more about the book itself.
Mm-hmm.
Do you, because you are so committed to this inner work, so that then there's more expression, full expression, whatever that looks like to the person,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's through a book or whether it's just at a family dinner table.
Right.
Right? It just
Yeah.
feels like you feel like, oh, I'm connected to myself and what I want to say, and I'm not going to hold myself back. I'm going to be
Mm.
brave.
Yes.
Oh, and in the book itself, how do you present? I mean, I know it's your journey, but do you have specific things or techniques or something
Mhm.
that you help people with in terms of them finding themselves, which means finding their voice?
Yeah, absolutely. So each chapter is, a piece of the story and kind of what I learned. And then at the end of the chapter, there's journal prompts for the reader to kind of go through and think about the lessons and the themes of that particular chapter, how it relates to themselves, what they can take away from it. And, so every chapter has some ways to really reflect on the lessons. And so, they can run along the journey right beside me. And I kind of like the way that for me, I just feel like we are on this journey together. So, like, let's go. Let's go
Uh-huh.
through it.
Uh-huh. Wow. It's almost like you're by giving your story and then having at the end a reflection for them. It's like, here, I'm not going to go anywhere. I'm going to stay with you as you
Mhm.
are considering how this impacts you. And I'll just hold your hand as you, or just be here with you while you do that.
Yeah.
And when you're ready for the next chapter, so I like the feeling of it being paced out
Mm-hmm.
according to whoever the reader is and what their needs are. And there isn't a kind of, let's get through this and get to the end. It's a process, is what I get.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And you're not fixed by the end, right? I mean, one of the real biggest messages that I want to drive home is that we don't have to be quote unquote fixed to keep moving forward, to do the things that we want to be doing, to speak to the truth that we embody, whether, like you said, it's at the dinner table, with the family member, or it's, on a stage at a TEDx talk, and anywhere in between.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And even what I'm getting from you today, privately with yourself, your own inner
Absolutely.
stage, if we imagine it that way,
Yes.
listening to yourself and being with yourself. Big, beautiful breath. I share that with you. We're coming to an end, and I always like to open up the moment to just see what wants to move through you to come to a close today in our conversation,
Mm.
however that might look. So it is, You already took your big full breath, but
Well, I just, want to leave anybody listening with the value of the awareness that you are not your thoughts, that the stories that we potentially have been telling ourselves about who we are and who we can become are things that we can rewrite if we so choose. And so the invitation is to just be willing to be curious about what's possible for you. What do you really want? And how can you take just the tiniest step forward towards that?
Beautiful, so gentle. Thank you. Thank you so much for today.
It's an honor and a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you for being with us today for this episode of Find Your Voice, Change Your Life. Each person Doreen interviews shares what has helped them find their voice. You can learn from these guests and find your voice so you can be confident to speak up and speak out. And remember to download Doreen's free 7-step guide to fearless speaking at doreen7steps.com. We hope you enjoyed the show and will return next time. Until then, goodbye for now.